So now we're ready, now that I've given you a recap of these four names, the king, the pure, the authority, and the wise. Now I'd like to talk to you about my second discussion, which is about the Prophet ﷺ and the four tasks Allah gave him. I want to share first of all the ayah with you, and then we'll discuss it in some detail, and I'll briefly translate it for you too. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. He is the one who appointed among the unlettered a messenger from within them, minhum, يتلو عليهم آياته, who recites onto them, who narrates onto them his miracles, his ayat. His revelations or miracles, you can call the ayat. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, and he purifies them. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ, and he teaches them, it says the book, but you can understand that as the law. The term kitab in the Quran, many places is used for the law. So he teaches them the law. وَالْحِكْمَةِ, and the wisdom. Once again, summarizing the translation, and I'll conclude it. He's the one who appointed among the unlettered a messenger among them who does four things. Here's what they are. He teaches them, he recites the ayat onto them, he narrates onto them or introduces them to the miracles. He purifies them, he teaches them the law and the wisdom. That's the fourth thing. وَإِن كَانُوا مِن قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ, even though from much before they had been immersed in obvious misguidance. These people were lost for many, many centuries, many generations, obviously lost, worshipping all kinds of false gods and pagan idols. Right? So that's the commentary made in this ayah. Here, once again, four tasks have been highlighted: reciting the ayat, purification, the messenger purifies, وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ, he teaches them the law, and he teaches them wisdom. In order to understand these four tasks, the first thing I want to share with you is the fact that the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, among all of the other prophets, carries a unique burden. Being the last messenger isn't just the fact that you're last on a list. It means you have the heaviest load that has ever been given. No other prophet is coming to guide humanity. So what he has been given and what he must deliver in those 23 years isn't just necessary that it transforms his immediate audience. He has to be given something that is going to continue to transform humanity until the Day of Judgment, the way prophets used to transform people. The job that was done previously by prophets must now be done by this one prophet for every nation, every ethnicity, every generation, every society to come until Judgment Day. That's the burden on our messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And on top of all of that, messengers used to be given miracles, and grand miracles, to be able to bring about their changes, to be able to convince people, like Musa and the staff. He's only going to be given the Quran. He's not going to be given anything else. But in order to understand the beauty of these and the flow of these four tasks in depth, I'd like to start this discussion with an analogy. And I think it ties in some of the key concepts that are being communicated here in these ayat. Imagine that there's a town that's kind of backwards as a village, not very civilized. People live there, they don't have much in the way of law or infrastructure or refinement. And one day, they see an entourage of horses, back in the day, horses decked out, soldiers in uniforms, and an ambassador coming with them. And the ambassador is dressed in clothes they've never seen before. Clearly, these people are not from around here. And he opens up this grand scroll and starts reading them a message from a king who would like to annex their village. He'd like to take over their village and offer them the benefits of being part of their kingdom, and starts giving them all of this message from this king. And these people look at him and say, first of all, it's obvious you're not from here, but how do we know you're actually here from a king? What proof do you have? So he shows them, coins. He shows them treasures that can only possibly belong to a king. He gives them some kind of indication that he represents royalty. If they're convinced, they say, you know what, we'll hear him out. We'll want to hear what this king has to say. We're kind of impressed with the entourage and everything he brought and the proofs of his grand royalty. We're going to give him a shot. Well, if you're going to go to that company of that king, you're going to go meet him, then you're going to have to dress your best. You're going to have to dress for the occasion and observe proper protocol. You're going to have to refine yourself. You're going to have to purify yourself. Keep in track, keep in line what we're talking about in the ayat. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. You go meet this king, and the king says, if you want to be part of my kingdom, here are the laws you have to follow. Here are the regulations you must now adapt. This will become your constitution. And he over time develops these people, and they implement more and more of the laws of the kingdom until they themselves become a very refined, well-developed, well-established, sophisticated society. And only as they develop and grow do they start learning the advantages of becoming a more sophisticated nation. They didn't see the wisdom in some of that law before, but now they start seeing that wisdom. They went through this process of refinement. I wanted to give you that analogy because it's kind of like what the Messenger did, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but there are some differences. And the commonality, however, is that those people that the Prophet came to have not had a message from their king for many, many generations. وَإِن كَانُوا مِن قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. The first thing, what did the Messenger do? He recited Allah's ayat. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ. People heard the message of the Quran and he's claiming that this is from God, it's from Allah. They said, how do you know it's from Allah? How do we know? What proof do you have that this is from Allah? The words of Allah were so powerful, were so grand, were so inimitable. You couldn't produce something like them. You were so overwhelmed by them that the audience that would hear it would know immediately that those words don't belong to a human being. They were experiencing the miracle of Allah's words directly. And that alone was humbling them. There were instances where people came to debate with the Prophet ﷺ, and he would recite ayat, and he would get to an ayah where Allah commands everyone fall into sajda. Disbelievers, the entire congregation of them would fall in prostration. That happened. The Quran's words overpowered them, and that's the first thing the Prophet did, introduce people to the miraculous power of the Quran. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ. He's introducing them, and while he's introducing them, they are in awe that this does not belong to this human being. This is coming from a much more grand, much more royal, much more powerful source. Then some people were in so much awe of that word that they wanted to accept that word and recognize that they want to now become purified. These were the people that then accompanied the Prophet ﷺ. They came all around him. They hovered around him. They formed a society around him, and he would give them constant reminder. فَذَكِّرْ إِن نَفَعَتِ الذِّكْرَى. Remind if reminder has any benefit. فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Continuous reminder is going to benefit believers. The Prophet ﷺ would continuously give them reminder through the word of Allah, and through that reminder, two things happened. Their hearts start being purified of greed, of jealousy, of materialism, of want and worry about worldly things. Their hearts start becoming more and more connected to Allah and less connected to material things. They start seeing things in a more refined and beautiful way, but their minds start getting refined too. Their thought process starts changing. They start criticizing things they previously didn't criticize. They start appreciating things previously they didn't appreciate. A purification is happening because of their constant exposure to revelation. This Quran is transforming them with this regular exposure. This is what yuzakkihim, He's purifying them. And when they reached a point of purification, their hearts and minds were completely submitted before Allah after they were in awe of Allah's miracles already. These became the strongest of people. People that were willing to leave everything behind. And when Allah gave them laws, finally when Allah started giving them laws, when He started telling them that certain foods that you've been eating your whole life, you can no longer eat. Certain drinks that are addictive in nature, wine and alcohol, addictive in nature, that you've been enjoying your entire life. Today's the day you stop drinking, that's it. Certain clothing, women that loved beautifying themselves and dressing up and going out in social gatherings and doing all of that. And then Quran comes and says, no, from today on you're going to dress like this. And gave them laws. When Allah gave those laws, these people were immediately ready to implement those laws. Why did that happen? Because two things had already happened over a long period of time. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ. They were in awe of Allah's miracle. They were humbled by Allah's words. And they were constantly being purified by reminder. And then finally they were ready to learn the law. I'm reminded, I always repeat it because it's such epic words by Aisha radiallahu anha. لَوْ أَوَّلَ مَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ لَا تَشْرِبُوا الْخَمْرِ لَقُلْنَا وَاللَّهِ لَن نَتْرُكَ الْخَمْرَ أَبَدًا. She says, if the first thing ever revealed in the Quran was don't drink alcohol, we would have said, Wallahi, we will never stop the consumption of alcohol ever. We will never give it up. Because we weren't purified yet. That's the point that she's making, So here, يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ is a very, actually, وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ teaches them the book, is a very, very powerful reminder that we have to internalize that laws, that the regulations of Islam aren't just taught just like that. Do this, don't do this. This is what we do with our children nowadays. This is haram, this is haram, this is haram. If you really want them to transform, then they have to go through the same process that the Quran identified here, Now, finally is the endless journey, wal hikmah, and he teaches them the wisdom. Why do I call that the endless journey? See, laws are a finite set of regulations. It's a number of rules. This is prohibited, this is prohibited, this is prohibited. This is a mandatory requirement. This is what you must. You must pray 5 times a day. If you can afford to, you must go to Hajj. You must fast in the month of Ramadan. Laws are finite and regulated. There's not an infinite number of laws in Islam. But wisdom is an entirely different entity. Wisdom is an endless, lifelong pursuit. The Quran didn't just come here to give us laws. The Quran came to give us endless, lifelong wisdom. My entire life will be spent exploring the wisdom of the Quran, and I will leave this world having only captured a few drops. That's the nature of wisdom. And so Allah Azza wa Jal says that finally He teaches them the wisdom. He teaches them a way to engage with this book and draw more and more and more treasures from it. And this is done by means of reflection and contemplation. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Don't they ponder deeply upon the Quran? This is the process that was given. And by the way, one more thing about wisdom is that wisdom also starts teaching you the wisdom behind the laws. It starts actually showing you that Islam isn't just a bunch of regulations. It's actually a moral code. It's a spiritual code. These laws have a spiritual benefit, a moral benefit. That's wisdom behind the laws that starts becoming manifest as you study. These are the 4 steps of transformation that the Prophet ﷺ was given. Now I get to one of my favorite parts in this presentation. And that is how these 4 parts that I just shared with you were able to transform that society that had been lost for many, many, many generations. Allah is telling us that the Quran cannot be underestimated. The Quran cannot be, it's not just a book that you read. The Quran is a book that you use to be completely transformed. These 4 tasks of the Prophet, I remind you again, he recites the ayat. He purifies them. He teaches them the law. He teaches them the wisdom, are actually perfectly superimposed on the 4 names of Allah that I started this discussion with. This is one of my favorite parts of this presentation. Allah Azza wa Jal will say, and remind you of those 4 names, the king, the pure, the authority, the wise. Go back to the king. The king is known by when people came and saw this ambassador, they were skeptical. Are you really from a king? What did he have to show them? Proof. What are the ayat? When the messenger recites the ayat onto the people, when he shows them the miracles, what is he actually doing? He's now showing them the proof that this can only be from Allah. Through the ayat, they get to know their king. Notice also, even in the introduction to the Quran, one of the first introductions to Allah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. Now, this closeness in Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, and then there's this grandeur, the kingdom of Allah, the king of the Day of Judgment, the master and the owner of the Day of Judgment. Now, the king is known by his signs, so yatlu alayhim ayatihi. That's how people will be in awe of Allah when they're introduced to the miracle of the Quran. The second name of Allah was Al-Quddus. Al-Quddus means what? The pure. Think about what is the second task of the Prophet ﷺ in the second ayah. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. And he purifies them. The pure is the name of Allah, and inspired by that name, this is what your messenger does. He purifies people by bringing them closer to the pure. This name and this task of the Prophet ﷺ are corresponding to each other. This is what the Prophet is doing. He's bringing these 4 names of Allah into people's hearts. He's instilling them into people's hearts. If you look at the third name, or the third name of Allah was Al-Aziz, the ultimate authority, the authority that should be respected. And what is an authority if not the lawgiver? An authority is the lawgiver. The Messenger ﷺ then teaches the law. The law on behalf of who? On behalf of the authority, whose authority should be respected until you develop an awe and respect for that authority. Until you don't realize that everything that authority does is there to purify you, you will not be able to implement that law. You will not be able to live by that law that the way you're supposed to. So because he's Al-Aziz, the messenger fulfills that izzah of Allah by teaching the people the law of Al-Aziz, the constitution of that authority. Then finally, Allah's last name in the first ayah was Al-Hakim, the wise. And what is the name of Allah that Al-Hakim corresponding to in the activity of the Prophet ﷺ, the task of the Prophet ﷺ? He says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. He teaches them wisdom. It is Allah, the ultimately wise, who will now teach His messenger to inspire wisdom into His followers, into the subjects, those who will accept this call and accept this faith. Subhanallah. 4 names of Allah directly superimposed on the 4 tasks given to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.